My name is John Gibeau. I'm a commercial beekeeper from Surrey, British Columbia, and my business is to rent bees to blueberry growers for the purpose of pollination. My company, Honeybee Centre, has 1,400 beehives. We're growing to our goal is to reach 3,500 beehives in 5 years, and we are the fourth largest beekeeper in British Columbia. The largest has 6,500 colonies. There's only 6 people in BC that make a living solely off bees. I'm one of the 6. Most of the beekeepers in BC are hobby beekeepers or semi-commercial, 300 colonies, but they have another job somewhere else. Crop pollination is a relatively new industry. Up until about 40 or 50 years ago, there were enough natural insects to pollinate the fruits and vegetables that we consume. And then with intensive agriculture came the need for crop pollination. So intensive agriculture is, for example, for blueberries, is the blueberry grower plants in 10-foot rows and almost 6 feet apart, and they created a huge number of blossoms on a small parcel of land. There are wild bees, but there's fewer and fewer, and there's not enough to pollinate large crops. Without honeybee crop pollination, we would have as much as a third less food. And that could even affect beef production, because in order for beef to be economically provided to the store, cows have to be fattened in a feedlot, and feedlots rely on alfalfa pollination, and alfalfa is a bee-pollinated plant. So if you remove those, the pollinators, you remove a third of our food, it could even affect beef. It's an issue with farming is industry consolidation. Massive dairy farmers, massive wheat farmers, massive canola farmers, massive beekeepers. The industry is consolidating. So now you have beekeepers with tens of thousands of colonies instead of 2,000 colonies. And they just do what they do on a larger scale so they can absorb a bad year and take advantage of a good year. For long-term food security, we should be, as a North American farmers, we should be going back to small-scale farming. Small-scale farming has strength in diversity. So a small-scale farmer is not using every square inch of the property to grow one plant. There's a corner for chickens, a corner for pigs, and maybe a corner for some milk, dairy cows, and a plot for fruit and vegetables. And that leads to a variety of food. So if one fails, the other revenue sources in the farm can pick up and take up that shortfall. So that gives you strength and diversity. And with that, the downside is you have higher costs of production. You don't have massive amounts of field of one type of crop. You don't have to rely on a beekeeper coming in to pollinate. You have your own bees. So it comes with it a higher cost, which is extended to the consumer. Consumers have to pay more money, but you have more food security for a region. About 8-9 years ago, there were some massive losses in the United States with no apparent cause. And so it was dubbed colony collapse disorder. The colonies collapsed, they died over a short period of time. It's a disorder, but it wasn't identified as to what caused it. And the current consensus is colony collapse is as a result of 3 or 4 maladies that affect a colony at the same time. So if you add up 3 or 4 issues, mites, viruses, a bacteria, and then a monodiet, the bees are only eating dandelion nectar or blueberry nectar or raspberry nectar and no other food source, no other variety, that stress can cause a complete collapse. So to combat that, beekeepers have to become more scientific. The beekeeper now has to take samples of bees, forward them off to a laboratory for testing, for virus testing. Take samples of bees and wash them. The easiest way to wash them is icing sugar. It doesn't kill the bees, and the varroa mite releases when the icing sugar powder gets between them. They cover the powder, they release on the bee, and they drop to the bottom of the vessel. You can count the mites in there. One of the current initiatives for research is the study of proteomics, and UBC is a partner in that. The concept is beekeepers send samples of bees into UBC with traits that they know the colony has. So for example, if the colony is hygienic, it cleans out the colony quickly after an interruption. That could be a way to deal with the varroa mite, is you have a hygienic bee that actually picks the mite off another bee and throws it outside. So hygienic behavior is a desirable trait. So if a beekeeper has a colony that they know is hygienic, they would take samples of bees, send them off to the UBC lab, study of proteomics, and say these bees come from a hygienic colony. And then the UBC lab takes samples of the bees' antennas. They analyze the protein composition, which is their proteomic study, and it's like a signature for that trait. So once they have enough samples and enough analysis of proteins, they can say, oh, this is a hygienic bee colony if it has these traits. This one overwinters strongly, this one produces lots of honey, this one is gentle by nature. So you have the study that will help a beekeeper select genetic stock based on the traits that the beekeeper wants. So I'm a pollinator. So I want a bee that survives over winter. I want a high survivability with low winter honey consumption that builds up quickly in the spring, that's gentle for my customers. So if I can find queens that have those traits, I'll pay more money for those queens and bring them into my colony and generate that type of bee. So we become more scientific-based farmers. We have to do the science, check, attend seminars, read books, read research papers, talk to scientists, and understand bees and bee maladies better.